Brett Anderson and Matt Osman, welcome back to Six Music, back at the Maida Vale Studios. Do you know what? From our records, the first session you did for Radio 1, April 1992, for Mark Goodyear.
Was that here?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
Was that? I think it probably was. Because the reason for asking, I mentioned this is you did a session in '92 and you did a couple of sessions I think in '94, but nothing in '93. Just as the album comes out. And you're on every conceivable front cover known to man. No sessions, I don't think, that year.
I think we were touring.
Busy or something.
We were touring and enjoying ourselves.
Is there a point, and maybe Maida Vale is one of those points, but at that time, is there a point in a band's life where you suddenly think, we're a proper band now? We're like those groups that we read about growing up. When you walk into Maida Vale or you walk into the Top of the Pop studios or whatever it was, is there a point where you just think, yeah, this is us?
Yeah, I think both of those two, they're both institutions, aren't they? They're both kind of like part of the rock pantheon or whatever, aren't they? And the first time we came to Maida Vale was pretty special. But you're right, Top of the Pops was always a kind of a real ambition, I think, for anyone that grew up in the 80s or the 70s or whatever. It was Top of the Pops was the thing that you kind of, that meant that you'd arrived. You know, so,
It was something that your parents could say. You know what I mean? Oh, you'll see him on Top of the Pops.
Yes.
Yeah.
Rather than he's in NME, you know.
Yeah. Before we go any further, as you can probably hear, Brett's a little poorly, but has vowed to carry on.
I'm such a trooper.
I know, showbiz trooper. Well, I mean, you say that. I can't see Matt, but you know, Matt's been standing behind you all day, going, "Finally, this is my chance."
Exactly.
Those backing vocals are going to be so loud.
He gets to talk about his bass parts at last. He's been waiting 30 years. No, we did a couple of crazy little gigs in like secret gigs last week. We did the Moth Club and then we did the Deaf Institute under an assumed name. And I kind of couldn't hear myself and I was shouting a lot, so I've kind of damaged my voice a bit. But apart from that, I'm absolutely fine. It's just a little bit croaky today. So you'll have to forgive me. I've lost my falsetto, so the songs aren't quite melodically right, but it's, you know,
it's all gone a bit Leonard Cohen, hasn't it?
Yeah, so we're struggling through it, but we don't cancel shows and don't cancel stuff, you know. We just struggle on through it.
Well, bless you. We'll keep this chat economically brief then, because we don't want to make matters worse. I've got one more question about the past. I don't want to get bogged down in the past, because obviously there's the new record to talk about. But what do you find it strange now, living in a time when your past is constantly living by your side, because it's all there on the internet?
I think the worst thing is just constantly seeing pictures of yourself when you're young and beautiful. It's so grim, you know what I mean? It's kind of like your public image is stuck in 1994. I don't go online because of that.
You're right. I mean, I was thinking the one upside. There's a few people who post old reviews from the music papers from when I was working at the New Musical Express, and it sort of reminds you of your mindset at the time and who you were. And I guess in some ways it's probably quite good to ask questions about, you know, where we are now, how we've changed and why we've changed as people. And there seems to be maybe a little bit of that in this new Suede album.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff about, I don't know, I've kind of reflected on myself quite a bit. The album is supposed to be quite kind of stark emotionally in lots of ways. I wanted it to be a record very much from the mindset of a 54-year-old man. Even though it's a rock record, I didn't want it to try and pretend I was still 25 again. That would be pathetic. So it's sort of about my thoughts as a middle-aged man, to be honest. I think that's quite an interesting way of looking at rock music, because rock music tends to be the preserve of the young, so it doesn't have the arrogance of youth, and there's a lot of vulnerability and a lot of sort of anxiety on the record, which you kind of only sometimes, there's a kind of anxiety about life that you only get in middle age, I think, as you sort of plummet towards old age. You know what I mean? I kind of wanted to reflect those sort of complexes, you know. And
how many of the songs on this record are you, and how many are written through the eyes of a fictional character who's wearing your clothes?
That's a very good question, Steve. You know, that's for me to know and for you to find out.
Okay.
No, it's a good question. I mean, that's exactly the point of the title, autofiction. I think there's a spectrum where you have truth on one side and fiction on the other. And I think there's fiction in truth and truth in fiction, to sort of give you a soundbite. But and I think all art sits somewhere on that spectrum. You know, even something that's utter fantasy explores human truths, and you know, novelists use characters, invented characters, to explore truths, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's things on it that are more fictional and things on it that are less fictional. Something like She Still Leads Me On is very, very, for me, you know, it's a song about my mother, and it's sort of torn from my, you know, life very much. But there's other things that I'm playing around with characters. I've always done that, though, and I think all writers do that, you know.
And this, because one of the reasons I ask is there's one or two moments where the protagonist is desperately trying to be understood in a way, with the emphasis on desperate, which comes across in the way you sing. I mean, it's a screamer of a record.
Yeah. I think there's a desperation to it. I didn't want it to be comfortable. I didn't want it to have that. I think there's a sort of kind of a tendency to believe that as artists get older, or as people get older, that they kind of, their lives get more comfortable and blah, 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 blah. And in some ways they do, and in some ways they don't. And I wanted to kind of reflect the kind of the discomfort you find yourself in as you get older. I didn't want it to be a kind of comfortable, nice, cosy jumper of a record. I want it to be edgy and hard and nasty in places.
Well, yeah, I mean, and the sense of loneliness at times, something like Drive Myself Home, there is, but although weirdly, that's set against something like, I mean, it feels like, you know, there's this feeling of isolation behind the scenes, but then when the person comes to life, there's that boy on stage which has got a certain swagger to it, and it makes you question, you know, whether the different lives and personas of some of the characters.
Yeah, I mean, that boy on stage is kind of interesting because it's simultaneously both truth and fiction, because it's a song about my stage persona, which is a kind of fiction in itself. Do you know what I mean? I started to become quite fascinated with that whole dynamic, that whole kind of, you know, thing about how every performer has a persona, and how every performer unwittingly often has a persona. And there's always moments of calm on Suede records, and this is very much a Suede record. Even though I've said it's our punk record, I've never said it's a punk record, and there's a difference there. There's a distinction. It's our version of punk. It's sort of punk through a Suede lens, but it's still a Suede record. And every Suede record has sort of dynamics, and something like Drive Myself Home is a moment of calm to interrupt the kind of noise.
I love Shadow Self as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
One of the other things I've got to mention this, because I sat down with a notebook, Mark Hugh, when I first listened to the record, and as strange as it might seem for a Suede record, but by the end of the first listen through, at various points, I'd written The Cult, Cramps, and Public Image Limited.
Nice.
I think that's pretty close, right?
I mean, I think one of the weird things is that when Richard joined the band, we kind of gave him homework to listen to the kind of bands that have been important to us and have been important to Suede. And in a weird way, I feel like, because he's such a good musician, he's kind of, all of those things have become part of his sound. But this is I think it's a record that comes from his record collection rather than ours. You know, it's Public Image rather than the Pistols. You know, it's the Fall, it's the Banshees, it's people like that. I mean, they're all bands that I think matter to all of us in the band, but I think it came from that place. We've never really started in that place before, that kind of post-punk, gnarly kind of situation. And I think it's totally changed and kind of energized us in making it.
And then additionally you have the electric charge of the way you recorded it? Because I imagine recording it the way you did was quite liberating, was it?
Oh, it's fantastic. I mean, the last couple of records have been very much studio creations, you know, been pieced together with other musicians and orchestras, you know, and everything on the computers. This was, I mean, it's the oldest cliche in the book, but it was the five of us in a room. Lots of it is our first takes, you know what I mean? There's kind of mistakes, and it speeds up and it slows down. But we were trying to get that kind of 15 again thing in there. That sense that you get when it's just the five of you in a room, and the pleasure of making a racket.
Also, that which I alluded to earlier, a certain desperation in the record. You're left with a sort of overall effects, music and lyrically, of should we just get on with it? Can we not just get on? Can we not just? Cause time might be running out. You know, let's just grab what we have.
I think that's true, yeah. I'm kind of like, I have this horrible sort of fact in my head that in 20 years' time I'm going to be 74. So, you know, there's not much time to
There's some urgency, isn't there?
Do you know what I mean?
To get some stuff done.
This is time sensitive, right? Let's kind of make some good music.
You've got to put your musical affairs in order.
Yeah, I know.
The album's called Ought to Have Fiction. It's released on Friday. You can hear half an hour of songs from it recorded at the Maida Vale Studios, coming up at 6:30. Brett and Matt, thank you very much. Give my regards to the rest of the band and look after yourselves. Take care.
All the best, mate. Cheers.
Bye.
Adam, it is tea time on Six Music, where we present on the eve of the release of their new album, Suede in Session.
When I think of all the things
You're listening to Suede in session on Six Music.
that's the thing. We have time tomorrow, as we have found today. We are the center of our race. Turn up Tuesday, I don't want nobody. I'm out with my shadow still. Turn up Tuesday.
It's a brand new session then from Suede for Tea Time on Six Music. Thank you very much to them. Some new stuff and some old stuff. The first 4 tracks you heard, all versions of songs you'll find on the new album, which is out tomorrow. She Still Leads Me On, Personality Disorder, 15 Again, and Shadow Self, followed by versions of Metal Mickey and Trash. Thank you very much, Suede, particularly obviously Brett, for soldiering on with his poorly voice after those low-key secret gigs last week. Thank you, Suede. And that's it from us. Thank you very much for everyone who's been in touch today. We're back tomorrow at 4 o'clock for our final show and some results from our festival survey. In fact, we'll leave you with this. This is for Gary in North Yorkshire, whose festival